After no murder charges announced in the death of Breonna Taylor, protests are picking up across the country. We'll take you to one of the scenes coming up. And Nederland High School cancels its Friday night football game against Huntsville. The connection between that decision and COVID-19 concerns.
Yeah, I need a boat to get to and from my truck. So you got to wake up extra early at 6 a.m. and, bust it out.
And Tropical Storm Beta moves through and impacted the neighbors to our east. How residents of one parish in Louisiana are recovering.
And with Beta moving out to the east, our weekend is looking great. We'll have all the details.
Fox 4 News at 9 starts now.
All new at 9 o'clock, violence erupting in the streets of Louisville tonight following the announcement of an indictment in the Breonna Taylor case. Officer Brett Hankinson was indicted with wanton endangerment for shooting into neighboring apartments, but there were no charges specifically for Taylor's death. And we do know tonight that 2 police officers in Louisville have been shot as protests were going on there, but no word on their condition as of yet. And right now, this is a live look in Nashville, Tennessee from our sister station WZTV as protesters there are filling the streets, upset over the decision from the grand jury today. Protesters are also out in cities like Austin tonight. This picture being seen across several cities and several streets in the United States. And in the wake of that grand jury's decision in the shooting death of Breonna Taylor, protests and demonstrations are popping up across the country, as we mentioned, and some turning violent. And take a look at this video that we got tonight.
It's not only Breonna Taylor, it can happen to anyone.
This was the scene in Louisville after the charges were announced. Demonstrators, starting as peaceful, quickly turned restless as officers began arresting protesters, with later reports of protesters throwing projectiles. Protests are being seen again tonight in places like Chicago, St. Paul, Minnesota, Washington, D.C., New York, Philadelphia, with all of them remaining peaceful. And again, moments ago, Louisville police announced that 2 officers have been shot. No additional details are available at this time, but we'll continue to update you as the story unfolds tonight. And growing unrest in Louisville after that grand jury presented its report on the police raid that led to the killing of Taylor. An indictment was handed down for one of the officers, but not for crimes directly related to Taylor's death. Fox's Anna Eliopoulos has more.
A grand jury indicting one of the officers involved in the death of Breonna Taylor. Taylor was shot and killed in March when Louisville police served a search warrant of her home. Former Louisville police detective Brett Hankinson was indicted on 3 counts of wanton endangerment for shooting into neighboring apartments in connection with the police raid.
On or about March 13th, 2020 in Jefferson County, Kentucky, the above-named defendant, Brett Hankinson, committed the offense of wanton endangerment in the first degree.
No indictments were announced for the other officers involved in her death.
The decision before my office as the special prosecutor in this case was not to decide if the loss of Miss Taylor's life was a tragedy. The answer to that question is unequivocally yes.
Ahead of the announcement, Louisville police braced for possible demonstrations. The department canceled officers' vacation and day off requests in preparation, while crews boarded up windows of the city's federal courthouse.
I assure you, we have resources distributed throughout the entire metro, prepared to meet any challenge we may face.
Louisville's mayor also setting a 72-hour curfew from 9 p.m. to 6:30 a.m. in an effort to discourage violent protests.
Most of the violence that we've encountered over the past few months has occurred after dark. So we're asking that if you decide to join a protest, you wrap things up by 8 o'clock or so.
Last week, the city of Louisville agreed to pay $12 million to Breonna Taylor's family to settle a wrongful death lawsuit. Anna Eliopoulos, Fox News.
A Southeast Texas attorney tells Fox 4 he hopes the indictment leads to changes in the criminal justice system. Langston Adams says law enforcement officers have a responsibility to act appropriately.
police officers should be held to a higher standard for the very fact that they hold life and death at their hips, and that a badge is not a license to kill. On the other hand, those same police officers, when they execute a warrant, they don't necessarily know who's on the other side, and they too want to return to their families.
Adams also told Fox 4 he believes more must be done to build trust between law enforcement officers and the communities in which they serve.